وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيد الأولين والآخرين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam was our, and still is, a role model that we follow every step he made in order to reach paradise and to have a happy, fruitful life in this world. And whenever he dealt with those who made errors, mistakes, or sins, he had a strategy, a pattern, and he had diplomacy and acted upon knowledge. And this is why we're studying his methodology, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in correcting people's mistakes. One of the tips that is important for us to learn and understand is the distinction between someone who makes a mistake out of ignorance and someone who does such mistakes knowingly and deliberately. So, among the stories that resonate is the hadith of Muawiyah ibn al-Hakam as-Sulami, may Allah be pleased with him. He said that once we prayed in congregation behind the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and a man next to me sneezed. And when someone sneezes, he says, Alhamdulillah. And as Muslims, when we hear that, other than in prayer, of course, we reply by saying, Yarhamukumullah. So Muawiyah said, Yarhamukumullah, loudly, in salat, in congregation. So the people started to stare at him, to make him quiet. He wasn't quiet. He said, may my mother lose me. Why are you looking at me like this? So the people started clapping their thighs, hitting their thighs, so that they would signal to him that, be quiet. He says, I wanted to defend myself and say something, but then I decided to stay quiet. After the prayer was over, Muawiyah says, the Prophet ﷺ did not rebuke me or hit me or put me to shame. He just said, this prayer should contain nothing of the speech of men. It is only tasbih and takbir and the recitation of the Quran. Similarly, we all have heard of the incident when the Prophet ﷺ was sitting among his companions in the masjid, when a nomad entered the masjid and started to urinate, squatted and started to urinate in the masjid. He's a nomad. He's a Bedouin. Doesn't know the etiquettes. Doesn't know the religion. Fresh, just came out of the desert. The companions were outraged. They wanted to stand up and beat this man for what he's doing. The Prophet ﷺ, being who he is, wise, tolerant, patient, and the best of teachers, said to them, leave him. Be and do not startle him. Knowing that when a person is urinating, his urine is isolated and limited to a specific area. If you startle him, he will spread it all over the place, and it would be more difficult to contain. So the Prophet told them to leave him be. After the man finished urinating, the Prophet called him and said to him, my son or my nephew, as the Arabs say, these masjids are not fit for such filth and dirt. These are places of recitation of the Quran and of prayer, and that they should be purified. And he ordered his companions to pour a bucket of water on the area where he urinated. The najasa, the impurity, was diluted and overwhelmed with pure water. No harm is done. These two incidents show us how we, as da'is, as students of knowledge, should deal with people when they are ignorant and do not have knowledge. On the other side of the coin, the Prophet ﷺ did not deal in such a way with his close companions who had knowledge. In an incident, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, may Allah be pleased with him, one of the first to embrace and accept Islam, had a dispute and an argument with Bilal the Abyssinian, Bilal al-Habashi, the mu'adhin of the Prophet ﷺ. And both of them are high caliber companions. Yet Abu Dharr seemed to have lost it. And in a fit of rage, he sort of called his companion Bilal by a racist comment. And he said, you are the son of a black woman. Of course he's the son of a black woman. He's black, he's Abyssinian. His father is black. So what's the big deal? He's black, he's white, he's yellow, he's red. This is how Allah created us. What's the point? Abu Dharr did not say this out of good gesture or out of a compliment or out of saying a statement. Rather, he said it in a racist fashion to degrade Bilal. Bilal did not reply. He could have reciprocated. He could have said something hurtful, but he did not. He went to the Prophet ﷺ and complained to him. The Prophet summoned Abu Dharr. When Abu Dharr came, having this at the back of his mind that I am one of the few who accepted Islam in the very early stages, so I should have seniority. I should have some form of status. The Prophet ﷺ rebuked him and admonished him and said, have you said to him, you are the son of a black woman? You are a man of ignorance. Now, being someone of an old age, respected, and being labeled as a man of ignorance was probably hurtful. So he said, O Prophet of Allah, after all these years, and I'm still considered a man of ignorance? He said, yes. By saying what you had said to your brother, you are a man of ignorance. And the Prophet gave him advice. Abu Dharr went straight to Bilal, not to blame him. Why did you complain about me to the Prophet ﷺ? Couldn't we have solved this between us? Aren't we brothers? He did not say any of this. He did not blame Bilal. Rather, he went and lied on the sand, putting his cheek on the ground, saying to Bilal, come and put your foot on my other cheek. O you, the son of a black woman. Meaning that I am even lower than what I had said to you, and I deserve only to be insulted and humiliated in such a fashion. Bilal did not take even. And he said, may Allah forgive you, my brother. Stand up, stand up. I'm not going to do such a thing. Also, in another incident, when one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ wore a ring made of gold, the Prophet did not speak to him ﷺ, did not advise him, did not question him. Rather, he went to him angrily and snatched the ring out of his finger and tossed it away, saying, why would anyone hold a stone of fire in his hand, a stone of hell? And he left. This is sufficient for someone of knowledge. This is sufficient for all of us to know that men cannot use anything that has gold in it. Whether it's a Rolex, whether it's a pen, whether it's your cufflinks, whether it's your keychain, anything that has gold in it, it is a stone of hell. And you're carrying it and it will take you to hell. It's prohibited. The companions said to the man, go and take your ring and sell it. Use the money. Do anything beneficial. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited you from wearing it. The man learned the message and the lesson. And he said, I will never pick up something the Prophet tossed away ﷺ. And he let it be. He left it. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father, came once, and by the way, Abdullah is known to be one of the narrators of the hadith. And he narrated a lot of the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, similarly to Anas and Aisha and Abu Hurairah. The difference was that he used to write a lot. So he used to document whatever the Prophet said ﷺ, and he had huge books of the Prophet's sayings and the Prophet's actions ﷺ. So he came once with 2 garments, and these garments were dyed with saffron. And at the time, people used to dye their clothes with saffron to have a beautiful bright color and to have a nice scent to it. Yet, this was known to be done by the idol worshippers, and the Muslims had to have their own identity and not to resemble the disbelievers. So when he came to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet was angered by what he was wearing. So he said to him this shocking remark, did your mother order you to wear this? Now, mothers usually order children what to wear and what not to wear. So this was, in a way, opening his eyes to the gravity of the sin he had done. Abdullah did not argue. And he knew that this was a rhetorical question. He replied by saying, O Prophet of Allah, shall I wash them so that the dye would be removed and I would have my garments clean? The Prophet said, no, burn them. And that was a punishment for the sin you had done, so that you would learn your lesson and others would learn from it that what you've done was not something easy. Now, from these lessons and different incidents, we learn that it's logical to deal with someone who's ignorant differently to someone who has knowledge. So when we hear that a scholar said something that even the layman know it's wrong, we do not accept that. And we have to also differentiate between whether the scholar or the da'i or the individual did what he did out of sheer ignorance or he put some effort into it. So there, we have to make a distinction between mistakes stemming from an honest effort to find out what is right, which we call ijtihad, and mistakes done deliberately out of negligence or because of shortcomings. Because these are two different issues altogether. People who do things out of ignorance, okay, we know how to deal with them. But what about people who do things with knowledge? We have to make a distinction and differentiate whether they made these mistakes or errors deliberately, knowingly that they were wrong, or they made an honest effort to find out what is right, which is known as ijtihad. These are two different situations. In the battle of Bani Qurayza, the Prophet ﷺ addressed the people in Medina. You should not pray Asr except in Bani Qurayza. So the Muslims immediately set off. In the middle of the way, the sun was about to set. And the Muslims, the companions, were divided into two opinions. One says, we have to continue walking until we reach Bani Qurayza, even if the sun sets, because this is what the Prophet ordered us, ﷺ. The other party said, no, if we do this, we will miss Asr and the time would elapse. And this is not what the Prophet wanted, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wanted us to rush in our way to Bani Qurayza, but the time of prayer is fixed. We cannot play with that. So half of them prayed and half of them decided not to pray until they reach Bani Qurayza. When they reached there and they told the Prophet ﷺ about what they had done, the Prophet did not comment, did not say you did right and you did wrong, though we all know that one of them is right, because right cannot be duplicated. It's either right or wrong. It's either halal or haram. However, because they made an honest effort to reach what is right, the Prophet consented to what both of them had done. However, technically speaking, those who prayed were right, because they did what Allah has ordered them to do, which is to pray at prescribed times. And they understood the comment of the Prophet ﷺ to be to rush as soon as possible and to do whatever you can to reach as soon as possible. And they did the right thing by praying. This is similarly understood from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, if a ruler judges and strives to make the right decision, and his decision is correct, he will have two rewards. And if this decision is wrong, he will still have one reward. So a ruler, a mufti, a scholar, a student of knowledge who's well qualified, when he makes a ruling or a verdict, and he did all what is in his ability to reach the truth, and he succeeds, he gets two rewards. But if he fails, he gets one reward. And if you look at the four schools of thought, the great imams of Islam, you will find that one says halal, one says haram, one says makruh, one says mustahab. On the same topic, we surely know that one of them is right and the other three are wrong. Yet those who are wrong, they are rewarded by once because they did their level best to reach that. This is different to someone who has the knowledge and yet he falls short, one who errs deliberately or because of his own shortcomings. This is a different story altogether. And this is witnessed today. When you go to some countries, in non-Muslim countries, for example, and you see the Muslims and even some da'is and some scholars, students of knowledge, fall into one of the major sins in Islam, which is riba. They take loans with interest, known as mortgages, and they buy houses. And when you say, Akhi, this is haram, you're borrowing in riba, they give a fatwa saying, if this is out of necessity, and this is the first time you do it, and it's not for commercial use, and this is a kafir country, it's okay. Subhanallah. How dare you give such a fatwa? There is no ijtihad in this. It's like someone coming and saying, okay, I am single, and I'm in a kafir country, and I'm in need of having a companion, but I can't get married. So does this allow me to have a one-night stand with a disbeliever, with a kafir woman? Of course not. So it's the same analogy. What are you doing? Pay rent for the rest of your life and no harm's done. But to come and justify it and to manipulate the rules of Sharia just because you want to buy a house, not only that, you even invite others to follow you. A'udhu billah. So you have to understand that there is a difference between someone who exerts effort with honest behavior to reach the verdict that would please Allah from someone who knows what is wrong. Those, in the first instance, the person should be taught and advised. But in the second, he should be warned and rebuked. And we must always be aware that not everyone has the right to do ijtihad. Only those who have the tools and they're qualified to make such an assumption, to issue such a verdict out of their knowledge and their background are accepted. Because when people give verdicts without such proper knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jal will punish them. A man was in an expedition and he was hit by a stone that made him have a vicious cut in his head and he bled. And they tried to treat him. He went to sleep at night, woke up having nocturnal emission. So he has to perform ghusl. He went to his companions and said, listen guys, you know that I'm bleeding and I have trauma and I have problems. And I'm afraid if I use water, this would harm me. Can I do tayammum? His companion said, no, as long as water is available, how could you do tayammum? You have to make ghusl. So the man took ghusl and he died. When the Prophet ﷺ heard of what they had done and what had happened to him, he was angered by it. And he said, they have killed him. May Allah kill them. Why did they not ask if they did not know? The cure of the one who does not know is to ask. So the Prophet did not take it easy on them. He said, you have killed him with your wrong fatwa. You did not have knowledge. Why did you give such a verdict? You should have said, I don't know. You do whatever you can and maybe Allah would find you a way out, but not to tell him you cannot use tayammum. And this is why the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, judges are of three types. One will be in paradise, and the other two will be in hell. So the judges are categorized into three divisions, not in quantity, but rather in the types of judges. One type, in good countries, this one type who's in paradise might be 1,000. In bad countries, he might be one. And two types of the judges are in hell. The type that will be in paradise is a man who knows the truth and judges accordingly. A man who knows the truth but judges unjustly will be in hell. He knows the truth, but he's being paid. He's being promised with positions. So he has no problem in doing what Simon says. He will be in hell. Enjoy as much as you can this life, you're going to hell. The third one is a man who judges between people, but he does not have proper knowledge. He will also be in hell. Whoa. Why? Why wouldn't we say that this man will be rewarded for his honest effort? Because he's not qualified. And when you're not qualified, you're not allowed to give such verdicts. Stay away. Move. Don't accept or assume such a position of a judge. You insist, though you're ignorant, then you will be in hell. And finally, we have to evaluate the environment and the circumstances. Not every time people make sins or mistakes, we may condemn them, because sometimes these mistakes and errors are forced upon them due to the environment. How so? Akhi, when you live in a country and all those you know of scholars and students of knowledge are corrupt, but you don't have the means to know so. How many countries do we know that have corrupt muftis that would make haram blatantly halal? Muftis that would have corrupt aqidah. Muftis who say to you, if you pray and offer salutation upon the Prophet ﷺ 500 times, you will not die until you see him in broad daylight. And one of them says, I did this for some years, and then when I went to Medina, the Prophet's hand extended to me from the grave, and I shook hands and I gave him bay'ah, pledge of allegiance. What kind of nonsense is this? Such a person is deviant. But the poor Muslims in his country who know no one other than him, who comes in the media, who gives circles, who attends events, think that he's the master of all, he's the scholar of all times, and they follow him. These people were misguided by him. So we have to know that these people are also ignorant and have to be treated in a different fashion than someone like that deviant scholar or mufti, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah, we'll be right back.